How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Conti and Nick. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. The first time they go offense, they take Jordan Love? They take Jordan Love!
Listen, Matisse Thybulle will lock up CP3.
Oh my
Chris Paul.
Oh my god.
Chris Paul, baby. Right, Will?
Nope, I totally disagree. Look. Welcome back, everyone, to the show that you live for. I feel like I'm stealing that from Ginormous, but it's Conti and Nick. We're back for episode number 66. I'm Will Nicholson. Alongside me, as always, Gino Conti. Gino, thank you for joining me on this beautiful, beautiful Sunday. A little episode before I head on to the beach, but it's good to have you, man.
Excuse me. I would just like to address the gimmick infringement that just ensued right here live on Conti and Nick. Okay. I would just like to highlight the absolute absurdity that is stealing other people's content on this show. This has zero integrity.
Zero
you know
integrity.
I'm out. I'm out. I quit.
I know. You got to start trademarking that. The show that you live for.
Yeah. Well, the lights are on bright. It's time to dance. Welcome to the show you live for. It is Ginormous. It's so simple. It's so
true.
smooth. Rolls off the tongue like a nice little Snickers bar. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there you go. No, it's
That made no sense.
no, it didn't.
no
But
sense.
but I'm still here for it. But no, we're back for Conti and Nick. We've both been running our own shows at this point. You got Ginormous going, and In the Nick of Time has been flying out. So we're underway here with the revamp and just making a whole bunch of content, and that will continue with Conti and Nick. And today we got some fun topics for you today. I think the first one we're gonna get into a little bit is the expectations for the second year quarterbacks. This is something that you wanted to talk about, so I'll let you intro and prep this one.
Right. So obviously there were a lot of quarterbacks that were taken last year in the NFL draft, and one way or another, most of them had an impact. And I would just like to kind of go over which ones, have to take that absolute next step. Which ones are we looking at absolutely positively? You need them to be that next guy. Sorry. And then you need some guys who you're willing to have a little bit of patience with as well. So I don't know how you feel about this, Will. I'd like to get JJ McCarthy out of the way first,
Totally.
because obviously JJ McCarthy, yes, is technically going into his second year. I think for all intents and purposes, though, we can call this his rookie season. So I would just like to say, even though yes, he is a second year quarterback, he's somebody who's going to have some expectations going into it, especially with how Minnesota had the good regular season last year, but ended off kind of flat. I'm just looking for JJ McCarthy to look comfortable in his offense, to find the tight end, because that was a lot of his game in Michigan, throwing to Colson Loveland, somebody who's also in that division, having another second year quarterback throwing to him, who we will get into. But yeah, I'm looking for JJ McCarthy to look comfortable. I'm looking for him just to find his footing, even if he does have some struggles early on.
Yeah, I think the big thing with JJ McCarthy, you mentioned this is kind of his like pseudo rookie season, right, where he's actually playing because he was hurt last year, but also he has a full year in the organization, right? He knows the people there. He sat behind a good quarterback to learn from in Sam Darnold, who had a insane comeback year. I want to expect a lot from JJ McCarthy because he was, he's a first round quarterback. You want him to go and, light the world on fire when he starts playing, but it is his rookie year, right? Where it's his first year playing. He's a first year starter. But it's hard to not expect a lot from him, right? Because this Minnesota team, very good. They made the playoffs last year. You thought maybe they weren't going to be as good with Kirk Cousins, and then Sam Darnold comes in and lights it up, throws for a lot of yards, makes a lot of plays. He's got a good receiving core. The O-line is getting younger and better. They got Hawkinson there now, who, like you said, he likes his tight ends at Michigan, so hopefully they can get that connection in the NFL. But yeah, I'm expecting a good amount from JJ McCarthy, but I don't know what that means necessarily. I think the NFC is still kind of weak, other than like the Lions, the Commanders, and the Eagles, and I guess like the Bucks. It doesn't feel like there's a real like top dog. There's not really a reason in my mind that they shouldn't make the playoffs in the NFC.
Yeah, I think that at the very least they should be competing for a wild card spot. And I'll say this, like as much as we all knew Sam Darnold was kind of viewed as a bust and then obviously came back and had that magnificent year last season, let's not forget the year before he did spend a year under Kyle Shanahan's learning tree and under his system, and there really isn't a better quarterback system in offense that you'd want to be in other than Kyle Shanahan's. There are a couple other, but I'm talking strictly for QB friendly, learning offense and getting the most out of yourself. You're going to want to be under Kyle Shanahan's system. And not too far under that is Kevin O'Connell. So he was in two really good positions. I think that the Vikings are going to have a little bit of a slight dip because even though, like we said, Sam Darnold was viewed as a bust, at the end of the day, he is a veteran. And he's been in several systems. He knows how to handle being an NFL starting quarterback for what it is worth, even though it wasn't that good. He's been there before and he finally had a good environment around him. I think that JJ McCarthy, once again, is going to be somebody who shows flashes and shows promise. But I wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota doesn't have as good of a year as last year.
Yeah, it's a strange boat to be in with these second year but really first year kind of players, where it's like the Ben Simmons rookie year, right, where it's like they've been in the organization for a year and you expect them to go out and play really well, but it's not their rookie season, but they are still a first year starter. It's hard. It's a weird situation for JJ McCarthy, because again, he's a high pick and you expected him to go in to that locker room and maybe even win the job from Sam Darnold, until we found out that Sam Darnold's actually good. It was just the Jets and the Panthers that were the problem with him. But he has so many expectations already, and now you go into he's been in the organization for a year. It's going to be an interesting year. I think they have a shot to make the playoffs. It's all going to be about how comfortable JJ is in that system, though.
Right. And I think that last year towards the end, like the second half of last year, we really saw Jordan Addison kind of come into his own and break out, because I'm very sorry about all the dings, by the way. But he started off I wouldn't say slow, but he needed to find his footing a little bit. Didn't necessarily make the impact that we would expect out of a first round wide receiver. And then as the year went on, I think he looked more and more comfortable, made a bigger impact. And I really expect that to continue into week 3. I need this to stop.
the
So, but
ringer, it always gets you.
yeah, I'm sorry, man. I am sorry about that.
That's all
But
good.
but yeah, yeah, I do expect that the Minnesota Vikings offense and the weapons around him will only continue to improve. We all know what Justin Jefferson is. Addison, I think, is going to take a big leap, another leap. And then TJ Hawkinson, coming off that really devastating knee injury, has another offseason under his belt. And I think that he'll return back to his prime form and will be a really good security blanket for him. And their offensive line's good. They invested a lot in their offensive line this year. So I'm expecting, I wouldn't say I'm expecting huge things from the Vikings, because again, it's all dependent on McCarthy. But I think that we're going to see what they won, like 14 games last year. I'm
Yeah.
thinking more around the 10 to 11 range this year.
So still potentially a playoff team if the NFC works that way.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I agree on that. Shout out to, we got some people flooding into the chat now as the episode goes on. Dan Monahan, Ryan Brown, Connor Brown, who are actually in the other room, but I know they're tuned in, listening to this one. And real quick, I'm gonna get this out of the way because this isn't the first time I've been asked this. This flag up here has been and it's facing outside of the window right now. Essentially what had happened is I don't have shades in this room, and a friend of mine that I work with was like, if I send you something, will you hang it up? I'm like, sure, whatever. So they sent me the most piece of garbage thing you could think of. I think there's like a bear smoking a cigarette and then just like a pizza, and it says "Impress Ladies" spelled LAYDEEZ, and then Opa Gangnam Style. So it's just to block the it's just to block the sun out. But yeah, it's I've been asked that once or twice. They're like, what is that hanging behind you? I turn it to face the outside of the window so you don't see the monstrosity. But yeah, address the
I don't think any of our
controversy.
fans I don't think any of our fans are trying to figure out what goes on in the Nicholson household after
Exactly.
hours.
Yeah, exactly. We got that hanging up there. I love the flag though. All right, so we got a couple more second year quarterbacks. I was wondering if we could go to Bo Nix a little bit because Bo is one of the
Sure.
people who I thought going into the season wasn't going to be that good. I historically called him tall Zach Wilson. When I was doing those NFL recaps to start the season. But he looked pretty damn good. He looked a lot better than I thought he would. They end up having a really good year. Bo plays well. Will that carry into year two? To me, I think it will be something similar. Like I don't know if Bo is gonna take this crazy leap where he's in the conversation of like being a top 10 quarterback. I think he probably sits at like the 15 to 20 mark for me. And I think that might even be a little generous. I think he's a good quarterback. But again, older guy, he's kind of already like hitting his peak in my opinion. Like obviously he's going to get better these next couple of years, but I don't know how much better a guy like Bo Nix is going to get over time. That's kind of the downside of drafting an old guy, which obviously the upside is he's good right away. He's been in college for a while. And he comes into the league ready, but now you're kind of at that, mid stand where he's only going to get like a little bit better, most likely heading into these later years of his career. I don't know what to expect from Bo. I guess I'll kind of gauge you here, Conti. What are your expectations heading into year two?
I'm with you. Like I don't necessarily see a huge ginormous leap from Bo Nix this season. I don't necessarily think that you're going to see all of a sudden he becomes an MVP caliber player. But I think what I'll say last year, I'd say he played at around a 6. I'm expecting him to be a 7.5, if that makes sense. I'm expecting him to take a marginal step up because once again, you have another year in the system. And just like I was talking about with McCarthy, if there's a coach that you want to learn from and have a QB friendly system from, Kyle Shanahan is going to be on the top of that list. But I'd say number two is Sean Payton. I'd say number two is Sean Payton. And to be in that system where they utilize their running backs a lot, utilize the screen games, a lot of the intermediate to short passing games, then I think that that's going to benefit Bo Nix greatly. They added more weapons during the offseason with Evan Engram. They got a wide receiver and a running back in the draft. So clearly they're trying to surround him with young talent that he will be comfortable with and grow up with in this system. And again, I'm not necessarily sure that we're ever going to see MVP caliber play out of Bo Nix. That does remain to be seen. I'm not going to rule it out. But right now, I think that Bo Nix is just going to be expected to take that next step, keep remaining solid. You know what I mean? Keep on continuing to execute the system. And then eventually, as you get older and older, we'll see, like we'll see what next steps you have to take. But I'm with you. I don't think that Bo Nix is going to take this huge step. Hopefully, I'm wrong because I kept him in one of my fantasy leagues and I have him in two. But you know what I mean. But
Yeah.
that's what I'm expecting out of Bo Nix. I'm expecting more of the same, but a little bit better.
Yeah, and what Dom's saying in the chat too, Broncos' dedication to the run game will allow him to play the best that he can. And I think that's the entire roster too. The Broncos have built up a really good defense and a really talented roster. So Bo doesn't need to go into these games and light the world on fire for them to win, right? He just has to kind of play his role. And it's kind of become a thing in the NFL community, kind of bashing game manager quarterbacks. But hey, if they're winning games, man, what more can you do? If Bo can just manage the game, score when they need to score, they got a good kicking game, they got a good defense. Like, what more can you ask from the guy? I agree with you. I don't think he'll ever be like an MVP level candidate or quarterback, but like 6.5 to 7.5, I think that's good. The way I think about it is, and I think I'm actually gonna do a tier list video of quarterbacks, and we'll put that on Conti and Nick and everything, but. I'd say last year, Bo was probably like a C tier quarterback. And this year, I can see him going up to like a B and going into that B tier and just winning games by managing it, not making the big mistakes, throwing those big interceptions, and just playing his game because Sean Payton's coaching. They're looking good. Especially Surtain's probably the best corner in football right now. They got a whole bunch of pass rushers there too. So Yeah, the Broncos, they should, be in the conversation for a playoff team.
Leave me alone. Sorry, man. I need to mute this thing.
You're good.
But yeah, oh my god, leave me alone.
They're popular.
But yeah, I know. Well, it's a sports group chat. I need to mute that on my Mac. That's the problem. I don't know how
Yeah.
I know. But yeah, I'm absolutely with you. I think that Bo Nix does need to take that next step, and he should. And yeah, oh my god, I need to mute this. I'm so sorry.
It's all good. It's all good. We'll give Gino some time to get the mute going. So we've got Nix, we've got McCarthy. I guess the next guy, if we keep on going down the list, would be maybe Drake May. So obviously Drake May, he comes in to the season not starting. He goes behind Jacoby Brissett, and then he comes in around halfway point, maybe a little earlier. I think week 6 or 7 was his first start or something like that. But yeah, he came in and started a little bit late. But when he came in, he looked good. That first game versus the Texans, he threw 3 touchdowns. It looked great. I think the turnovers were still a little bit of a problem. Whether you want to say that was him or not is up for debate, because that roster obviously was not assembled very well. They picked number 4 in the draft, excuse me, and took Will Campbell. The O-line's gonna get better. You bring in Vrabes, you bring in McDaniels to coach. And it should be a better roster this year. How much can you expect from Drake May as we head into year number 2 for him?
My group chat's muted now, so
There
no
we
more
go.
distractions. But but what I should expect out of Drake May, and in my opinion, what fans should expect out of Drake May, is once again just to take that next step. Now, I'm not going to say it's on the same level as Bo Nix, but I am going to say a lot of the same things, because I do believe that Drake May is supremely more talented than Bo Nix is. One went third overall for a reason, and one went 12th overall for a reason. But again, I do believe that Drake May just needs to take another step forward. And to me, another step forward for Drake May is just to play more winning football, because I think that all his ability that he has was on display last season. I think that a lot of that upside that we saw was there for most of the games. He just didn't have good help on the offensive line. You know what I'm saying? He didn't have any time to throw the ball. And when you don't have any time to throw the ball, what you're going to be able to show on the field is only so limited. You know what I'm saying? So I think with that protection, we should see a lot more of the flashes of what we saw from Drake May last season. And I think that's just going to lead to more winning football and making more winning plays. I'm not necessarily going to go into like a technical standpoint of, okay, he threw for 200 yards a game last year. Now he needs to throw for 250. He threw 2 touchdowns a game last year. He needs to throw 3. Like I'm not necessarily sure what we should expect from Drake May is a significant statistical improvement, but I think a significant winning improvement is what we should expect. We won 4 games last year. We should at least double that with our schedule and with our improvements on our roster. I'm expecting 8 to 9 wins from the Patriots this season, and I think a lot of that will be spearheaded by Drake May.
No, 100%, and I'm right there with you,
Yeah.
right? I don't think the numbers are gonna tell the story about Drake May. We saw flashes last year, like in the Miami game, he's escaping from the pocket, he throws a deep ball and it's a touchdown, and you're like, oh, that's great. It cuts the lead to 20 in the 4th. So like they weren't winning games because the roster wasn't really assembled to do that. But this year, I'm hoping that we see those flashes, and I'm with it. I don't think he needs to throw for more yards, more touchdowns, whatever. He just needs to win more games. He needs to win more football games, play good winning football. And that is going to be the big tell for me of Drake May. I think he's going to play well. I think he's going to throw for a decent amount of yards and throw for touchdowns. But they got to go and win some games this year, because the roster is assembled to, like you said, be in that 9 to 8, or that 8 to 9, win range. And he has the ability, the physical ability to make these crazy plays, but it just has to lead to winning. And that's the question. Can Drake May? He had all these cool plays and these flashy arm angles and deep balls that were thrown for touchdowns, but can that lead to winning? I think so. So that's going to be the big tell for me as well in year 2. Can Drake May go out and win some football games?
Yeah, I think he can. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that he can, because it's kind of similar to what I, I hate making this comparison because nobody is ever going to be Tom Brady.
Yeah,
Nobody is ever going to be Tom Brady. So please don't mistake me for comparing him to Tom Brady or giving him the expectations of Tom Brady. But during the Patriots era where we were winning Super Bowls, the story of our quarterback was the numbers don't tell the stories. It's about making and executing the right plays that will propel us to victory. You know what I mean? And with the same type of offensive coordinator, with the same one like Josh McDaniels, obviously that is what's going to be expected to execute and not necessarily put up sports in our top 10 highlights.
exactly. Yeah, Drake May.
Yeah.
I'm expecting a good amount. I'm ready for him to go and win some games. That O line, Will Campbell, I'm fired up for now. By the way, which is funny. I wasn't super high on him early in the draft. I thought it was kind of a wasted pick. But maybe it's the fan in me that fell in love with him right when he you know got up to the stand and said that he was gonna fight and die to protect Drake May. That got me going a little bit. That got me a little fired up. But
How could it
excited.
not?
Oh yeah, exactly. Excited for Drake or Drake May. Yes, Will Campbell seems like a great kid, so I'm excited for all of that. We got a couple more quarterbacks to run through here. I guess we'll go to the guy who I probably have the most expectations for. Actually, Washington Commanders, Jaden Daniels. I think he without a doubt was the best quarterback. Um, Out of this class last year. They made the playoffs. They win some playoff games. They take down Detroit, get to the NFC Championship game. Just insane job by Jaden Daniels. The biggest thing that we, I guess, didn't expect, his ability to launch the deep ball and his accuracy was highly underrated because we thought he was just going to be a running quarterback and take time to really take that next step like Lamar Jackson because he's got that kind of the same kind of frame where it's more quick and twitchy and a little bit thinner, but can move around the field like crazy. Similar play style, but man, was his arm on display last year to start it off. Gino, what are your expectations for Jaden Daniels?
For Jaden Daniels, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to say that he's going to go through a sophomore slump because I do not believe that he's going to be significantly worse than what he was last season. I really do think that at his best, he is that dude. And he is, when he is at his best, amongst the most talented quarterbacks in the league, obviously, which can lead to huge wins. But do we believe, I'm not going to give you this long winded analysis, I'm going to ask you a question, Will. Do you believe we saw last year from Jaden Daniels was sustainable?
I don't know. It's right. It's a bad answer, but I think
Hmm.
it can be right. I think Jaden Daniels is the type of guy where he can be an MVP type of quarterback. He can, look like Lamar Jackson. He plays a little bit different. He likes to launch the deep ball. Lamar is a little more intermediate, and every now and then we'll go deep. But he was just firing balls to Terry downfield last year, scary Terry McLaurin, and it was working. I think the offense was schemed up well. I think Washington, now you're on the up. You got a new stadium coming. You're kind of getting the bad taste of the former Washington team out of your mouth, and you're moving on to new, bigger, and better. And I think that Jaden Daniels is kind of the top of that. People were skeptical about him, skeptical about the accuracy. Is he just a good college quarterback who's not going to be able to take it to the next level? I think I think it is sustainable, but I agree with you. I don't know if next year is the year, right? Like that's gonna be hard to sustain. They're getting a little bit better. Debo Samuel obviously gets traded into there. It gives them another weapon. But I don't know. I don't know how it's gonna look. I'm excited to see it. I'll say that. I think that he'll still be good, but I don't know if they're beating the Lions to go to the NFC Championship good next year.
Right, and I'll be honest. One of that game in the divisional round against the Lions, that was one of the biggest upsets I've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
I when I was watching it, I was up in Portland, Maine, with all my buddies. I had quite a few adult beverages in me, and I was loudly expressing my disbelief in that victory from from the Commanders that year. I could not believe what I was seeing. And again, I'm not hoping. I'm not a Jaden Daniels hater. Look, when I was watching Jaden Daniels last year, all I could do was just sit and watch in awe and amazement of how a rookie was able to carry this team who was just picking number 2 overall the year they got him to the NFC title game. I really hope nothing for the best from Jaden Daniels, and they have made improvements. They got Laramie Tunsil, who's a top 10 left tackle in the league. Debo Samuel, there are some questions on his durability and if he's able to perform the way he once performed. But, I'm sure as a number 2 option and with less pressure around him, that will make him at least somewhat useful. You know what I'm saying? So they do have a lot of improved weapons and areas on paper, but I'm just a little I don't want to say I'm doubting. I'm just a little skeptical on if he's going to be able to repeat or improve on his performance from last season.
Yeah, 100%. It's a tough,
Yeah.
it's a tough show to follow, right? When you put on this magical performance where you get all the way and you have that huge upset. Uh, I don't think that's sustainable for like this year. I think they might come back down to reality a little bit. I think Jaden still probably plays well, but again, you can't have a miraculous season like that too many times in a row. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe he wins the damn MVP the way that he's been playing next year, and that's not crazy to say. I think to be like, hey, if they play well, and Daniels takes that next step, he could be an MVP candidate. Who knows? I think he was already in that conversation a little bit last year. So yeah, we will see it with Jaden Daniels. I'm fired up to watch him play next season. Should be a good one. Now we're at the one to me who I think has the most expectations, in my opinion, Gino. Number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams. Did not play well last year. He had moments. The Bears were 4-2 at one point, and then he lost to, speaking of the devil, Jaden Daniels in that crazy game where he throws that big Hail Mary that gets tipped up and they end up winning the game. And from there, it fell apart for Chicago. They end up picking number 10 in the draft. They take Loveland. This roster is still pretty good. They got a new coach coming in Ben Johnson to run the offense and to just run the whole show there in Chicago. I don't know about you, Gino, but I got some pretty high expectations for Caleb Williams going into year 2.
Well, the expectations better be high because they have done everything in their power to surround this kid with all the necessary weapons in order for him to be successful. They buffed up their offensive line in the offseason and in the draft. They drafted Luther Burden and Colson Loveland with their first 2 picks. Got an offensive lineman, Ozzie Trapello, out of Boston College. So they better damn well have high expectations. And again, like a first year coach like Ben Johnson, obviously is going to have their struggles, but we have seen how he is able to operate an offense when he has the perfect environment around him. We'll see if Ben Johnson is able to take that offense and that magic that he brought to Detroit over to Chicago, because now guess what? He's not just in charge of the offense and just making sure that Penei Sewell gets a touchdown catch every single season. He's now in charge of a whole entire football team. So I'm not going to say, oh, like Ben Johnson's going to fail. I'm not predicting Ben Johnson's going to fail, but the amount of offensive gurus, the amount of offensive coordinators that we've seen that were going to so-called change the league and just go off with their offense just because they got a lot of good players and then just failed. The list of those type of coordinators turned into head coaches is long.
Oh
And
yeah.
I would know because Josh McDaniels is now a 3-time Patriots offensive coordinator. So, so you know what I'm saying? Like, I know we're kind of talking about Caleb Williams and not Ben Johnson, but I think a lot of this is going to be dependent on them because, yeah, Caleb Williams does have the ability. He does have, he was the number 1 overall pick for a reason, but the guy got sacked so many times last year, partly because he held on to the ball so much. And I'm sorry, he's a diva. Like, if you're gonna ask me, this is biased. Oh, sorry, a podcast show host being a little bit biased. Sorry, I'm breaking the fourth wall here. But hey, I'm biased, and I think that Caleb Williams is a bit of a diva. He's not for me, but he better do well. That's all I'm gonna say.
No, I'm with you. He put on this whole show and dance, but he got drafted last year too, and they drafted a punter, and he openly tells him we're not going to punt a lot next year, and I think they were one of the most punting teams in football at one point. So, it's a lot that Caleb Williams kind of goes into. He's a big personality. He's got he puts on a big show, and he's the number one overall pick. He's got the flashy plays. He gets the Mahomes comparisons. All that stuff. And I know Gino hates that stuff, but no, it's high expectations for Caleb Williams. As you said, he's got the coach, he's got the offense, he's got a year under his belt. It has to be now. The NFC is 100% the weaker division. They're not as good right now in the NFC. They need to go out and they got to be a playoff team. They have too much money invested. They have drafted some good players, as you said, Luther Burden. They've buffed up the O line. They got Loveland at the number 10. So they give him a safety valve at tight end. Now is Komet still there? I can't remember if he signed somewhere else.
He is still there, and he and Cole Kmet a couple of years ago got paid too.
Yeah.
They have DJ Moore, and Romo Dunze as well. So they have put so much into the weaponry for this offense, and like I said, buffed up that offensive line this past season through free agency in the draft. So to me, Will, there are no excuses. I know it's a young team. I know it's a team that's going to have to perform a little bit above their weight because, they have to get that experience, but they have so much expectations on them at the same time. And this is what I'm saying. Yes, you can be like, yo, look at what they did on paper. Look at all the weapons they're surrounding Caleb Williams with. These people still have to learn how to play in the NFL. All these other weapons aren't just necessarily going to come in and be dominant and just automatically understand that they need to make Caleb Williams look better than what he is. Do you know what I mean? A lot of this growth needs to come from within. And if that's why I'm saying it's so heavily it's on Ben Johnson.
It is on Ben Johnson. He's got to make these guys work, but also Caleb Williams, you don't have an excuse now, in my opinion. It's your second year in the league. You had to deal with that NFL speed. You got used to that NFL speed pretty damn quick because you got sacked a whole bunch for holding on to the ball for too long. So you got to go now. Obviously, they're rookies, but you have weapons. You need to make people around you better. It might be a lot of expectations, but you are the number one overall draft pick. You have comparisons to the league MVP and probably the best quarterback in the NFL. When you came into the league, this is what you have to deal with, right? You have to be able to step up to that plate and hit a home run. You have to be able to make this team win games. You were 4-2 at one point, and then you fell off. It's time. This has to be a comeback year. Even if they don't need to light the world on fire necessarily, they just need to play good football. To me, they need to be a playoff team. I don't know about you.
If they don't make the playoffs, it's a disappointment. Now, that's not me predicting that they will make the playoffs, but if they don't make it, it's a disappointment.
100%. No, it's some big shoes to fill for especially Ben Johnson as well. I'm glad you brought that up because that is really the determining factor of how this thing is going to run. Is he going to make Luther Burden into a weapon? Do they have the right coach there in Chicago? They got a new tight end in Loveland. They have invested a lot. The entire franchise, they've given the keys to Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson to go and make this thing work. So it's going to be a huge, a huge thing they got to deal with. It's got to be a big season.
Huge test.
100%. I think we hit all the second-year quarterbacks, right? All the ones that are at least notable.
Yeah, Michael Penix.
There we go. That's the one we missed. I was like, I feel like we're missing one, but I couldn't think of it. So, last one here. Michael Penix. Obviously, he was behind Kirk Cousins. And then kind of similar to Drake May, he comes in halfway through the year. And I thought he looked okay. He looked even kind of good at some points. I don't know about you. My expectations for Michael Penix this year is, I'm going to be real, out of all of the quarterbacks, I think he is the one that I have the least expectations for.
I'm not gonna disagree with you, Will, but because I do think that yes, he's obviously kind of the least sexy name out of all the guys that we've talked about today. He's not really kind of a known entity. He had some time last season, but I don't think a lot of kind of the national media and the national viewership really got eyes on Michael Penix and who he is yet. So I do understand why there really isn't a lot of noise around him. But I'm expecting not huge things, but I'm expecting some good things from him. You know what I mean? I'm expecting him to go in, be able to run the offense that Zach Robinson has made for him, and I'm expecting them to be in that playoff hunt. I do think that Michael Penix is like we said, talked about older quarterbacks. He is on that older side, so he has a lot more experience. So I do expect the Atlanta Falcons to have a functional and competitive offense that competes against anyone in the league because they do have weapons there, and they've also improved their offensive line this year.
100%. Yeah, I mean Kyle Pitts is going to be out of there. It seems like he is ready to get traded. Um, but yeah, I truthfully I still have faith in Kyle Pitts. If you know, maybe I'm too far, but I know maybe I'm too far bought in. He's been misused. He's been misused in Atlanta. I don't think he's ever gonna be like this top 5 tight end in the league. You know, comparison that he had when he came into the league. But yeah, he's gonna get moved on most likely. He's gonna get traded. They're gonna see what they can get back for him. As far as Penix goes, I think like compared to the other guys, he's probably got another buffer year in my opinion. Where like Caleb Williams, you got to perform. Jane Daniels, you got to perform. Bo Nix, like all these guys who have experience, it really didn't feel like Penix got a whole bunch of it because I think he got hurt at one point too. So it's I think he still has another buffer year in my opinion. I don't expect the Falcons to be a very competitive team. I think they'll be fun. They'll be excited. They got Bijan back there, and like you said, they still have those weapons hanging around. But yeah, I truthfully I'm not expecting a whole lot from Penix. I would like to see some flashes of him being able to throw for a lot of yards and to push the ball downfield because that's what he was great at Washington, being able to throw like those sideline, big balls right down the sideline and to the outside and these big play opportunities, very accurate. So I hope to see a lot more of that, but I'm not like sitting here and I'm like, he needs to do this or do that. Truthfully, I don't even know if they're gonna win a lot of games in Atlanta. So it's hard to set an expectation for him.
Yeah, yeah, and I like I said, I completely know what you're saying because that division is always in flux. You know what I mean? It seems like for right now, Tampa Bay kind of holds that top spot at least for the time being. You never know. Carolina played really well down the stretch last year. Atlanta's always hovering around the 500 mark, so it is really tough to gauge. And like I said, I do understand why people aren't really giving it a lot of thought and a lot of attention. But I am gonna kind of set the bar of him to be solid this year. You know what I mean? If Michael Penix isn't solid this year, to me, I'm not going to say you got to, raise the panic button and press it, but I do think that there do need to be questions going into next offseason if Michael Penix doesn't show you a starting caliber quarterback this year.
No, 100%. I think we're going to be looking and we're going to probably have this conversation in about a year and set our year 3 expectations for Michael Penix because right now we don't have a whole lot to work with. We don't even know where we can set his expectations because we haven't seen him a whole bunch. But I'm with you. He needs to be solid. He needs to be a starting level quarterback at the minimum. He was like the number 7 overall pick. Like you need to be decent. You need to be a starting level guy. But yeah, I think that wraps up our quarterback talk. Last couple of minutes here. I know you wanted to do some Mike Tomlin talk on whether or not this is going to be Mike Tomlin's last year coaching. Gino, I mean, what do you think? Is this the farewell tour for Tomlin with Aaron Rodgers?
I I'm so conflicted. I go back and forth on this so much because on one hand, I do understand and slightly agree with the point of view with people who say I think Tomlin's voice has kind of grown stale in that locker room. You know what I mean? Because I can't dispute that. The team has not taken the next level that Pittsburgh Steelers fans and the team expects them to take. They have not won a playoff game since Barack Obama was the president of the United States. You know what I mean?
It's been
Like
a minute.
that's the last time the Pittsburgh Steelers have won a playoff game. Now they've always been there. They obviously never have a losing season under Mike Tomlin, and this is why I go back and forth because it's so rare that you get a coach with that level of consistency. And obviously, I read this is a slightly kind of off topic, but follow me. Bill Cowher, the coach who came before Mike Tomlin for the Pittsburgh Steelers, won a Super Bowl there. I read his autobiography, and with there he goes into how people like whoever's the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers does not have say in the roster construction. They do not have say in what goes on. It is strictly up to the general manager. So you can blame the front office for Pittsburgh not surrounding Mike Tomlin with the offensive weapons that are needed to win football games. And Mike Tomlin always gets them to that at least 500 level, if not bringing them into the playoffs. So it's so tough because to have a coach who kind of makes something out of nothing every single year with a poor offense is great, rare. Every coach in the league and every team in the league will take that. But at the same time, he's also not winning the level that they expect. Do you know what I'm saying? It's so
Yeah.
tough. I can't make it an opinion. I go back and forth on it.
It's hard, and I'm with you there because it feels like, on paper, it probably should be Tomlin's last year, at least in Pittsburgh. I think he could probably still coach somewhere else, as weird as that would look. Um, but it's so hard for me to say, like, that he wouldn't be a Steeler anymore, because that is like the Steelers' whole identity is Tomlin and the smash mouth AFC North style football, where it's a lot of defense, and then you run the ball, you do what you can, you grind out these wins, especially in the cold weather. They're not afraid to play in it. But now you bring in Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf, and it already kind of feels like it's shifting a little bit in Pittsburgh, and it's felt like this for a while. Where I agree with you, is maybe losing his voice a little bit in that locker room, and I think maybe we're starting to see a shift with, like, you bring in a guy like Rodgers and DK Metcalf, and they're not exactly your Steeler norm, and it looks a little bit different. So maybe Pittsburgh is trying to bring in a new age, a new era, and get a younger coach potentially. But I don't know. To me, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and give an answer. I will say yes. I think that this is Tomlin's last year in Pittsburgh. I think he could coach somewhere else. But truthfully, if Tomlin decides to go and retire, I think that he's probably one of the best coaches that's been through the NFL, and especially for the Steelers. Who knows? I have literally no idea. To me, it feels like they're already trying to bring in this new wave, though. So I'm gonna go. Yeah, this is probably Tomlin's last year.
Yeah, and again, it's so tough because the coaches quite literally in that team do not have a say in what goes on. So it's really hard when the front office doesn't equip you with the weapons that's necessary, especially in this offensive minded day of age in football. They don't equip you with that necessary construction of the roster on offense, and yet you still continue to bring them to the playoffs or at least 500. So it's and then like you blame the coach, but then also, what I mean, the coach should kind of at least win you one playoff game in the last like almost 10 years. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it's so tough to kind of find that middle ground as to who's really at fault for this because it's just there's so much that goes into it. And I'm not going to make an official prediction, but if they don't win, actually, I guess this is an official prediction. If they don't win a playoff game this year, I think this is it for Tomlin. I think this is it. If they win a playoff game, I think he stays. If they don't, I think he goes somewhere else.
So you think that if they don't win, he keeps coaching because he's still like relatively young, right?
Right. And if I'm a NFL owner, like look at like the Giants, look at just anybody. You're telling me because they're giving Brian Daboll one more chance. You're telling me if you're the New York Giants, a team that has been so desperate for just relevancy, consistency, and always kind of having that puncher's chance of being in the playoffs. And we all know how the Giants get when they get to the playoffs. For whatever reason, they just have this ability to turn it on and beat anybody. If you're the Giants and Mike Tomlin's there, you're telling me you wouldn't take him?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you would have to. I just looked it up too. He's 53, so he's still got some years left in him to coach, but he's starting to get to that point where he could 100% retire and no one would really bat an eye. I think. Yeah, I agree. I think there's coaching spots for him across the league. I mean, if a guy like Josh McDaniels can get multiple chances at head coach, I think Tomlin should 100% be able to get him. The Harbaughs have had experience and gone back and forth through teams too. So Who knows?
Pete Carroll has had 4 NFL head coaching jobs.
That is pretty insane.
Yeah, yeah. Like so, this year with the Raiders, this is his 4th team he's been a head coach of. So
Yeah, we got Cam in the chat too, who I'm agreeing with right here, saying any other coach would have gotten a lot more grief for the Kenny Pickett experiment. I think so. I think that the fact that it's Tomlin, we kind of let that ride out a little bit. And it's like, Kenny Pickett's not good. Tomlin's fine. But yeah, I think it's he might have lost his voice inside of the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room as far as the players. With the owners, I think they're getting ready to set up a new future. In my opinion, I think he'll probably be gone if they don't win a playoff game. I think that's a good benchmark to set for that. We're coming up on about 46 minutes here. I think I'm pretty satisfied, Conti. A little bit of an early episode today, as I do have some stuff that I got to get to. I got people behind me that are like, it's time to go, and I'm like, I know. We're going to the one and only Tommy Nicholson's summer house, and we're gonna hang out, do all that fun stuff.
awesome, man. Hey, like I'm very happy with how today went. Tell Tommy I said hello. Tell Connor and Ryan I said hi. It's nice to see them. Nice to hear from them. Haven't seen them in a while. Yeah, and I'm satisfied with how today's conversation went.
Absolutely, yeah. Make sure you guys follow us on everything at Conti and Nick on Instagram, on TikTok, all that stuff. We have a Twitter. I haven't posted on there in forever, but we got one. If you want to go follow it,
May I leave a suggestion, Will?
of course.
I think that if we're gonna pick out a human being to pick somebody who would want to run our Twitter, I think this man's very studious. He's very dedicated to his craft.
He's in the chat as well.
If this man were to be our Twitter manager, I'd be more than happy. I'm trying to think of his name.
Who would
Perhaps
that
on the
be?
count of 3. Perhaps you could help me out.
Of course.
Gianbro!
We'll see you next time, everyone. Peace.
Yeah.
I can show you what love's supposed to feel like. I can show you what love's supposed to be. I can show you what love's supposed to feel